Hello, okay. Oh good, I'm live in the right place, I think. Okay, good afternoon and or good evening if you're watching it on the replay. Welcome to Papercraft with Jenny, and this is the extra bonus card for the New Horizons suite of papers. That people who signed up for the April Double Up monthly card club will be getting. So I'm going to show you this card, how to make this card, which is called a variegated panel card. You had lots of extra papers in your pack this month, so this is a bonus one that you can make in your own time. And I'm just going to show you how to make it. This is a slightly simplified version. So the original variegated panel card, I think, was designed by a demonstrator called Debbie Henderson, and has also been copied by the Pampered Stamper as well, Jackie, who's a Canadian demonstrator. But I've made it a bit more simplified, and I hope you like it, and I hope you'll find it slightly easier to make. There's lots of measuring and lots of cutting, and it's all in inches, I'm afraid. So that's my first warning, is you'll need inches to be able to measure this in the same way that I have, unless you're planning on kind of converting it all to centimetres first. But hopefully you'll get on okay with it and find once you get into the swing of the measuring and cutting, it's actually quite simple. It just takes a bit of time and thought, really. Okay, so the New Horizons papers work really well with this particular style of card because the New Horizons papers are all watercolour washes that look like kind of backgrounds and landscapes and scenery. And so you can add your own stamping. So here I've added a sailing boat and some birds to the watercolor wash, and it will create an instant kind of almost a photographic picture for you. So you can design your own picture and create what you want out of some fairly kind of simple papers, really. Also, it works really well if you want to use patterned papers of any description, flowers, trees, or any kind of views like that. But it just particularly works well where you've got kind of a landscape view, because if you look at this card, it's almost like kind of looking through a window, isn't it? Looking through a panelled window and looking at the scene outside, and that's the kind of impression that you want to get from it, really. So this is what we're going to make. You're going to need one sheet of patterned paper that's going to be your image. You're going to be focusing on the kind of middle portion of this paper. So if you've got bits around the edges that you don't like so much, that doesn't matter. This is a 6 by 6 inch sheet, but we are going to trim it down further than that. So the focal point needs to be kind of in the middle of your picture, if you like. So you need one sheet of that. You're going to need a standard half a sheet of A4 card base, card blank, and I've scored mine in the middle ready for that. My card here, because I want to make that lovely kind of landscape look, is a tent fold card. So that's the way I've done it, but you could fold and crease it whichever way suits you, really. It doesn't matter too much. And then I've got one matte layer as well to go on top. And this is my standard size matte. And I just have 1/16 of an inch gap around the outside of that. So I've just trimmed off an 1/8 on either side to give me my kind of 1/16 all the way round. And that's my matte layer, and that's what I'm going to be sticking my patterned paper directly onto. So we'll get all those things out the way for the time being, and we're just going to focus on the patterned paper. So I have got a cutting guide that I can share with you as well. This is the cutting guide. It looks really complicated, so I will kind of talk you through it, and we'll cut through it together as we go along. There's also a PDF tutorial that goes with this card as well, which I will put in the YouTube link below, so that you can download that as well, and it will have the cutting guide on it as well. Okay, so let's just get that out of the way for the time being, and we'll just do one step at a time. So you need your trimmer, and the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to cut your patterned paper to a size of 3 3/4 inches high by 4 3/4 inches long. Now, if like me, before you start cutting, if like me, actually, sometimes your cutting isn't bang on to the 1/16 of a inch, then what I would advise you to do is to cut the 3 3/4 inch height, but don't worry too much about the width yet. We can trim that down as we go along. Remembering that you want to make sure that the middle of your card, so let me just go back to the card, the center of your card where you've got the most height and these two side panels, is where you want your image to be. You want to make sure that, for example, I've got a boat, so I'm going to want the boat to go in the sea, but I also want some of this lovely sky in as well, that you make sure that you center that piece of the paper when you're cutting your 3 3/4 inch height. Okay, so I'll show you what I mean. I do want to have a little bit of the yellowy sky as well. So I'm going to start by just trimming that piece off. So I've still got some yellowy sky. I've got the lovely pink sky. The green that I'm going to imagine is kind of trees and bushes and things in the distance, but I also want some water in as well. So I'm now going to turn around and find my 3 3/4 inch mark and then trim off the bottom. So I've now got the right height, the right width of patterned paper, but I've got all of the bits, all the imagery that I want in my pattern. I quite like this bit over this side as well, so we'll see if we can get some of that in as well. But that's what you want to start with, is your patterned paper 3 3/4 inches high, or wide if you like. I'm going to get my trimmer out of the way for the time being, because the next thing I'm going to do is to add some imagery to my patterned paper by adding some stamping. So I'm using Rich Razzleberry because that's the card base that I'm going to use. And the stamp set that I've chosen to use is Sailing Home, purely and simply because I love the birds and I love the sailing boat. I think that together they create a really great image. So I'm just going to take out the small sailing boat and the birds, and I'm going to add both of those. I'm just going to stamp those into my scene here. So just a bit of tap, tap, tap. Let's just make sure we've got ink all over before I stamp it. Yeah, that's looking good. That's better. And then I want to make sure that my sailing boat is high enough up the card and fairly central to the image, but obviously that the bottom of the sailing boat is in the water. There we go. And then I'm going to add some birds as well in the sky, flying to the boat and flying away from the boat. So just a couple of stamped images in there, nothing too much, but just enough to give a little bit of a focal point and add a bit more interest in the picture, if you like. Okay, so now I've got to this point. This is where I need to start cutting. So the first thing that I'm going to do, let me bring my card back in again. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the strips. And you may be able to see, if I hold it up a little bit more, the strips are different widths apart. Okay, so the cutting guide gives you the measurements for the width of each of these strips, but that's what I'm going to cut first. So I need 7 strips across my card. Okay, So bring my cutting board back in again, my trimmer. And the first measurement from this end is going to be 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to think, okay, maybe I want to start in the middle, in fact, because I really want my sailboat to be in one piece in the middle. So I think maybe actually I'll start my cutting. And this is why I didn't cut the length of the paper first, so that I could then move it around and decide where I want my image to be. So the first measurement I'm actually going to cut is going to be the center strip. So this big long strip in the middle. So I'm just going to cut down one side of the sailboat. Oops, that was a bit of a false start there, wasn't it? There we go. Just put that one piece to one side for now, because I want to use that. And this sailboat this middle strip needs to be 1 inch wide. So I'll move it across so that I've got the inch marker out to the right here. And there we go. That is my middle. That's my middle strip. Okay. So let's just put that to one side. And then I've got the two pieces now either side of that center 1 inch strip. These two pieces need to be 1/2 inch wide, the next two. Oops, losing lights as we go here, excuse me. Let's try and prop those back up. Come on, stay put. Okay, so we need a strip 1/2 inch either side. So we'll do 1/2 inch, and I'm going to place them in the right order next to my sailboat as well, so that I don't lose them. And then I need 1/2 inch off of this side as well. So I'm using both measurements either side of my cutting board to make sure that I make it easy for myself, and I get my strips, well lined up, and make sure that they're all straight and everything. So 1/2 inch either side of that central strip. And then the next measurement is 3/4 of an inch. So let's move that one over. It does look like I'm going to be able to get that that lovely end piece, kind of beautiful colours in the sky. That's the bit I want to keep, really. So 3/4 of an inch next. And there's my birds. And the same off the other side, remember. You're going for sort of almost a waterfall effect, it is really, in terms of the widths and the height and things. So that goes this side. So the stamping also enables you to be able to kind of match where your strips go across your card, which is also really helpful. And then your final measurement, the two outside pieces. So these two very end pieces are 5/8 of an inch. So that is there. I'm not going to line it up with the top. I'm going to line it up with my grid lines. There we go. So 5/8 of an inch is that very tip of the bird's wing. And this piece I can now discard. And then the same on the opposite side, 5/8 of an inch. So let's just get that lined up. Just using my grid lines now on the scoreboard to make sure that I've got the right measurement here. I'm saying I've got the right measurement. I think that last one might not have been 5/8 of an inch. I have to measure that again in a minute. In fact, let me do this the same way round, and then I'll know, won't I? There's 5/8 of an inch. I just need to measure that one again and make sure that it was right. That looks a bit wide for 5/8 of an inch. I might have measured that one a bit wrong. Did I? Oh no, it was the same. It was right. 5/8 of an inch. There we go. Not quite sure how those two are both 5/8 of an inch though. That can't be right. Somehow I've got that one wrong. Because that bit's 5/8 of an inch. That's why. Oh, well, that's okay. Fortunately, there's no birds on there, so I can line the horizon up with that one. Okay, there we go. So let's move the scoreboard out the way and you'll be able to see. If I bring all the pieces in, you'll now be able to see how they line up and how they're slightly different. In fact, let me put them on the matte layer so you can see exactly how they line up. Yeah, that one's just slightly off, but that's okay. That will be okay. So I'm not too worried about positioning yet. We'll come to that when we kind of stick them down. Just want to show you how the picture still lines up across the patterned paper. Now you could just stick them down like this if you wanted to, but the whole point of the variegated panel is that you now take some height off the top and the bottom of each of the side pieces to give you that lovely kind of looking through the window panelled look. So that's the bit that we're going to do next. Once you've got all your slices, if you like, the next bit is to chop the top and the bottom off. So I'm going to bring my cutting guide in again. So when you have a look at the cutting guide, when you download it, you've got 1 inch there. These measurements and these are the widths of each of your strips. So you've got that central strip was 1 inch. Either side of that is 1/2 inch. Either side of that is 3/4 inch. And your final strip is 5/8 inch. Okay, we're now going to look at these measurements here across the top. So we're only going for the 3 outer pieces. The central piece will stay exactly as it is because that's already the right size. It's these side pieces, the kind of steps or the waterfall effect that we're looking for. And you need to cut the same measurement off of the top and the bottom of each of your strips. And the reason for that is because you want to keep that horizon in your picture being able to line up across the whole card. If we kind of just chop a big chunk off the top, then your horizon won't line up, which is the whole point of the card, to give you that sort of looking through the panelled window effect. Okay, so we're going to step it down by 1/4 inch each side, each step you're going down, and the same on the bottom as well. So the 2 either side of that main panel, you'll take 1/4 inch off the top and 1/4 inch off the bottom. Then 1/2 inch off either top and bottom, and the same on the other side. And then finally 3/4 inch off of each end. Okay, so again, you just need to be really careful that you don't mix the panels up, so that you know what order you're cutting in and what height the amount that you're cutting off. So I'm going to start with these middle ones, and we're cutting 1/4 inch off of each end of these, because we're going in 1/4 inch stages. So that's hardly anything off the top, and 1/4 inch off the bottom. Get those bits out of the way. So just managed to, let's get rid of that. There we go. Yeah, so you've got 1/4 inch off the top and the bottom for that first panel, and then 1/2 inch off the next one along. And then we'll do the same. Oops, that's a bit wonky, isn't it? We'll do the same on the other side in a moment. Let's just square that off. In fact, I'm going to do that with scissors because I fear I may otherwise just tear the paper. Always good to show when things don't go quite according to plan. There we go. So it's just leveled it off. And then 1/2 inch off the bottom as well. That was me not holding on to the paper tight enough. And then finally 3/4 inch from the top and the bottom of that final strip. There we go. So that's one side now done, as you can hopefully see. So we're going to do the same on the other side of that central panel. So 1/4 inch off the first strip, the one closest to the centre, and then 1/2 inch off top and bottom of the next strip along. And you'll know if you've not cut the right bit off, you know, if you've forgotten to cut a top or a bottom off, you'll know, because when you line them up, you'll see that when you line the horizon up, you'll see that there's a bit of a gap. And then this final one is 3/4 inch top and 3/4 inch off the bottom. So there's hardly any C left on that little bit. Okay. Now, let me put that again onto the matte layer, the matte black layer, because then you will see how effective it is and what you've been aiming for. So you're lining up the horizon, but leaving a little bit of black between each of your strips, so that creates that kind of panelled window effect. Actually, that one doesn't look too bad now it's lined up, doesn't it? It doesn't look too much of a jump. You just need to be a little bit careful if you were doing the same on a more kind of a less abstract maybe picture. Here we go. There you go. So that's what it will look like once it's all glued down. So you want to have just a little sliver of black, so a little gap between each of your strips as they go across the card. The other thing to do as well, now I've got this pretty well lined up actually, but when you start sticking, and we'll do this in a moment, you're going to start with that middle strip. So the best way to do that, obviously you can mark a central point if you want to, because I'm using grid paper, I'm going to line my my edges of my card up with my grid paper so that I can see where the central line on my black card, on my black mat is. And I think it's around about there. So yeah, I have got that. That boat is pretty central to the strong line on my grid paper there. And then it's just a case of sticking them down. But like I said, start with the middle panel, because if you can get that in the right place, then everything else is really easy after that, going either side. So you could use any kind of glue at all. If you fear that you're going to get it in the wrong place, then probably a good idea to use something like multi-purpose adhesive, or some kind of wet glue that you can move around. But if you're pretty confident that you've got it in the right place and you'll be able to get your strips in the right place, then you know, it's patterned paper. This is designer series paper, so it's really pretty thin, and you can just use seal or another kind of like tear and tape or something will be perfectly acceptable to stick it down. So again, forget about looking at the top and bottoms to line things up. Line it up through the picture in your paper. So I've got a tiny bit of stamping there, and I've got the horizon. So I'm going to line it up with those two elements and stick that strip down that way so that I get it in the right place. So, and it's just worth taking your time at this point. Just make sure you line things up, make sure you've got the right gap between. So I'm making sure that my bird wing is lined up and my horizon, and I've got the right black card gap on the mat in between, the same even spacing. So this card is all about lining things up, measuring, cutting, and as I said at the very beginning, you can start with a piece of perfectly sized patterned paper, which would be 3 3/4 inches high, 3 3/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches wide. But personally, I find it's so much easier to do this card by working out what you want in the center and then cutting the paper down as you go along, just like we've done today. So there we go. I'm just lining up that very little tip of the boat and the horizon again, so that I get that strip in the right place. This time I'll have the bird's wing to line it up with, as well as the horizon. So that will be great. Or the land, it's not horizon, is it? It's kind of the edge of the land. So I'm lining the birds up to make sure the bird's wings and body line up first. You don't want a bird that kind of steps in and jumps. And then the final strip, let's get a bit more tape on there, will line up. Again, you've got that little bit of land mass and you've got the bird wing to make sure you're perfectly in alignment. There we go. And so that is your matte layer and your main focus of this card completely finished. So that's brilliant. So then the next thing, or the only thing left to do really, is to bring in your card base. And I'm just going to fold and crease that. So these, as I said at the beginning, this is my standard UK card base. I hate wasting card or paper or anything. So my card bases are always half a sheet of A4, whichever direction I cut them in, and whichever direction I'm going to make the card in, it doesn't matter. I always use half a sheet of A4. You can mount this raised on dimensional pads if you want to, but I'm going to stick it flat down on the card for this one, in the same way that I did the other one. And I find when I'm sticking card to card, I prefer to use multi-purpose adhesive, just because I think it just gives you a bit of a stronger bond. It's cheaper for a start. So I'm going to open out the card base so that I get no bounce back, whilst I'm kind of just lining it up and make sure I get it in exactly the right position on the card front with a nice even border around the edge, and just stick that down firmly. There we go. And that is your card pretty much finished. The only difference with the original one that I showed you was I've added a sentiment at the bottom, and this is just stamped with Versamark and then heat embossed with white embossing powder, the thanks. And that's it. That's how to make a variegated panel card using New Horizons Designer Series patterned papers from Stampin' Up. Thanks very much for watching with me today. I hope you'll give it a go, and I hope you'll make along with you. The cutting guide that I've shown here now will be available as a link in the comments underneath. And if you're receiving this as a follow-up email, then you'll get the link to both the video and the cutting guide. You'll have a link to as well. So yeah, hope you've had fun. Thanks very much for joining me. Bye-bye.